Perfect. All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming to our seminar series on AI and human flourishing, organized by MIT Media Lab Advancing Human with AI, or the AHA program. We are really excited to have an amazing speaker today. She's my colleague and also an incredible researcher, Dr. Sunny Liu. She is a director of research at Stanford Social Media Lab. She has done amazing work focusing on social and psychological effect of social media, AI, and also companion robot. Her work explored the intersection of psychology and human-computer interaction, and we are really excited to have her today sharing about how social media and AI might impact human flourishing. So with that, I'll pass it on to you.
Thanks so much, Pat, for this nice introduction. And really appreciate you hosting me when you're at Kai at Barcelona. And hello, everyone. Really appreciate all of you being here. So today I want to talk about strong media and the weak media, and especially how we think about humans and human flourishes in the age of AI. So whenever I think of today, I think it's the best time to study and to research about media. Each week we have new product, new features, and new capacities we're all excited about. But this excitement actually it's not new. About at least 2,700 years ago in Greek mythology have this character called Talios. Talios is maybe the first, I think, automation or social robots, I think that human ever put in the writings. Talios is super tall and also super strong, has all those brown features all around his bodies. So he was, his task was really running around the island of Crete and then trying to protect the island. Whenever he saw those boats coming to invade the island, he will throw rocks. That is Talios. So we think about from like at least 2,000 years ago to now, our fascinations and also excitement about medias seems always be there. But I think that what we need to understand more is how those new medias, new capacities, new features, and the new capacity change or unchange or transform our human beings. So today I want to share about a few studies my colleagues and students have done in the past couple of years. Is really, I think that I want to study, I will share a few studies. First is focused on how those AIs or technologies, medias change our human, fundamental human. The first thing we think about human is really language, how we use language to communicate. Second is the interaction processes in the interaction. So I share two studies. First, focus on how different type of medias change or unchange our language. The second is about human AI interactions. So we think about language, the written language. I think one of the forms of language we practice every day is email. Lots of people do that multiple times, spend multiple hours each day. So how different type of features relate to AI that change how we write our emails. So this study was led by two of the amazing peoples. One is Harry Yang. He was a postdoc at our lab, and then now he's an assistant professor at UT A&M. And then the second is Clara. Clara was an undergraduate student intern in one summer in our lab, and this was her idea, is how technology change how we write. So the medium we study is about Google Smart Reply. So for those of you who maybe not have that, is I think a couple of years ago, Google has in the Gmail system had these smart replies. When you're trying to respond to a certain email, they give you three options: great, thank you, or awesome, all those options. So in this study, what we're trying to answer is a very simple question. Does the mere presence of smart response suggest really change the way how human write, both immediately and downstream? To really answer this question, so we have random controlled study design. So what we did is this study has two studies. First study, we're trying to understand is does the mere presence of smart replies actually change how people's writing when they respond to that email? But I also want to know whether this change has downstream consequence or not. When you receive an email that was primed by AI, would that you change different, or would you actually your writing change further change or not? So for the first study is a 2 by 2 between subjects design. So what we have is when a participant come in, they were assigned to one of those 4 conditions. First, they will either assign to a positive event or a negative event. A positive event is described as an email you received from either a colleague or friend say, hey, I got promoted. So that's a positive event. The second condition is it's an active event. So when the participant come in, they'll get an email from either their colleague or friend saying that I broke my leg or something. So that is the first factor is the event type, positive versus negative. And then the second factor we really want to dive in is about the mere presence of smart replies. So half of the participants will, when their emails, they will see it's actually with the smart reply suggestions. For example, congratulations, so happy for you, that's fantastic news. And then other half, they will have the exact same emails, but without those smart reply suggestions. So for first study 1 is a 2 by 2 studies, event type, and whether there's a smart reply presence or not. And at the final, our data is coming the writings. So all those participants, they will actually write the emails. So the writings were the data that will conduct the analysis on. Then for our second study, we want to know that for the writing, it's generated by either positive or negative events, smart reply versus not, will have downstream consequences that will be transferred to the second round of those email communication languages. So for the second study, first study, we get about, I think that 1,000 emails. Among those 1,000 emails, we randomly pick 40 emails. And then all those 40 emails, and then we'll just give as a stimuli for the second study. And participants will see those 40 emails and then write their responses. So that's a study. So let's quickly look at the effects. So we want to, for whenever we think about language, there are 2 important things, written ones. First is about, I think, terms, positive versus negative. So that is fundamentally change important dimensions of humans' writings. The second part is about the style of writing, is formal or not. So in this study, I would share about findings related to key aspects of the linguistic signals, positivities and formalities. So if we look at how the mere presence of smart replies change or unchange humans' writing. For the study 1, what we see that whenever there's a smart reply, the main effect of smart reply is that people will write more positively. For short email, that people were more likely to have 1.5 more number of words more likely to be positive. And so actually they will also use they will use less negative language as well, although that is not significant. So in general, in study 1, what we see is people's writings, when they have a smart reply presence, become more positive. But this positivity did not transfer to the second study, means that this positivity only had 1 degree impact and did not transfer to the second study. Although in the first round of emails, people become more positive, but this positivity disappeared in the second email writing processes. And we also want to know whether does that impact by event type. We know that for positive events, for promotion, we want to convey those positivities. But for negative events, we want to maybe be more empathy, show more empathy and use more negative words. So what is for positivity, for positive events, it's a significant use of more positive words when that's in the AI presence conditions. And when AI presented and people less likely to use negative word, this is especially true for negative events. In the first emails, positive, when it's a positive event and AI prime condition, people more likely to use more positive words. And with negative events, people's negativity towards diminished. So that is a first order effect. Come to the second study, again, we see that this effect disappeared. There's no significant differences transfer. So we also want to, I think that's the first part of study findings is about emotion tones. Conclusions based on the study was that people become more positive when they're writing, but this effect only lasts during the first round of email. So it's short-term impact, does not have long-term chain impact on the second email. And the second thing we want to really understand is that does that change the style they write? What type of words they use? One of those indicators is called standardization and what type of language they use. For the first study, whenever there's a presence of smart replies, people write more formally, even with their friends and friends in mind. So that changed the way they write. And this actually also the case for the study too. So let's think about what's the implication for this experiment. Does AI change how people write? I think that our studies show that the mere presence of smart reply options change how people write positively and negatively. And they also change the type of language they use in their writings. So that was before large language models. Now I think that all those large language models, ChatGPT and the different AI tools, has done lots of writing for us. We can see that the way people write, here's a study, I think, used the focal word frequencies. After the launch of those large language models, the number of times people use certain words, for example, aligned, boasted, comprehended, significantly increased. So what's the implication here? So I think that we can unpack here in two ways. First of all, when lots of writings are done with AIs that really have another way to formalize or have AI writing styles, do that really impact people's writing and in what way? And the second, let's think about now in our everyday email systems. We see very similar interfaces at the one I just showed, smart replies. And in our outlooks, different ways that AI can incorporate with our writing. So the key questions we need to understand more is when all those small dosage of change in our everyday email interactions, what are the cumulative impact on our communications from language production aspects here? So that is, I think, is a fascinating way. So we need to understand years and longitudinal impact on that. So now I want to change to my next study. So next study is about how humans leverage AIs to produce messages. So this study was led by Bingshi Han, is an amazing second-year PhD student in our lab, and Angela Lee, a postdoc in our lab now, and soon to be an assistant professor at Wisconsin. So Bingshu's main insight for, I think, all her studies, how we can reduce human suffers. One way that we can support each other and reduce human suffering is by providing support, especially when other people are in need. But we all know it's so hard to actually always be available, be supportive, and provide all those empathetic conversations or support to our friends. So Bishu's main insight is, can we actually leverage AI and then use AI to help us to be more empathetic from those people who are the providers of empathetic messages. Here we call first person perspectives is if I have a friend that is in need, I need to be empathetic and I try to be helpful. So the first person effect, perceptions of these empathic messages. So that is the main core research question for this study. Again, we used experimental design. So when participants come in, they are randomly assigned into three conditions. The first is the control condition. So once they come in, they will first read our protocol consent form, give their consent, and then we'll ask them to read some messages that ask for help. All those messages will come in from Reddit forums that we randomly sampled, all those messages in those forums and people disclosure of their mental health issues, so need seeking support. And then if you are in the participants, if they're in the control group, they read these messages and then they will ask to write a response and trying to write a response when they see those trying to be helpful. And then they will write it and then we'll give them opportunities to modify and finalize it. And after that, we have the surveys, ask them about their perceptions and their reflections. So that's a control condition. And then participants can also randomly assigned into, we call it the first condition is we call it AI, I think that's at the reviewer condition. So what this condition does is when participants come in, they will see the same messages, but then they will also ask to draft their responses. After that, they will have AI come in. So, okay, you drafted, now AI can revise to be revised for you. I will be the editor for your messages. And doing those collaboration, human first, followed by AI edits, and then we ask participants the same questions, ask them to reflect their experiences. The last one is also have similar processes, but the difference is we call this is AI drafter condition. What it has is, again, participants come in, give their consent, they read the messages, but instead of themselves draft those responses, they will get first is ask AI. AI will first draft, and then they become the reviewer. So if you think about this, is AI is taking the driver's seat, and humans will be the ones actually doing the final approve rating and make the final decisions. Three conditions: experiment, control, and AI reviewer condition, and AI drafter condition. So the outcome variables we're interested are three types. First, we want to understand, does those AI and human collaborations change the communication processes? And second, we want to understand when humans using those tools to respond to those social support and empathetic messages, how they think about themselves as communicators. So lastly is about the message quality. Do the messages that collaborated between AI and human is better or not? So for the three outcomes, we have different three outcome variables. The first one, communication processes, were measured by effort and difficulties, how hard it is for the first person to actually to write and provide those social emotional support. And the second one is autonomy. How do I feel that I'm in the control and I have the agency as the first person to actually deliver those messages? For the self-perceptions, when I trying to support a lot of human beings who I use AI, how do I feel about myself? I'm authentic or not? So perceived authenticity is the main determinant of these outcome variables we want to measure. The last one we want to know is really doing those collaborations or message is really convey those empathy or not. So the perceived empathy of the messages are the outcome variables. So let's see the results. Not surprisingly, and I think that here is we have a different bars. The first gray one is about control, and then the second one, lighter blue, is about AI editor condition. The last one, AI drafter condition. So I think that as we can expect, participants reported filling the task less effort for in the last two AI collaboration conditions related to control. When AI is there, they feel that it's much easier for them to write those empathetic messages. And among those two AI conditions, people feel significantly easier when in the AI drafter condition. When AI take the driver's seat, people feel that it's even less, even I think that's more easier for them to complete those tasks. The second one is okay, it's easier, but how much participants feel that they are in control? They have the autonomies in the whole process of this message generation. So we can see that with AI, participants do feel diminished autonomy in the AI collaboration conditions, especially when AI was the drafter. AI make the communication processes easier, but it also actually diminished humans' autonomies and agencies during this process. So the next one, I think it's really important, is during this interaction processes, how people feel about themselves as a communicator. We all know that fundamentally convey emotions and be empathetic are the things we think are fundamentally human. So when we leverage all those AIs to complete those human tasks, how communicators themselves feel about themselves. Interestingly, so there's no significant differences about perceived authenticities between control condition and the two AI conditions. People feel like even with AIs, they feel they're still authentic. They're still fundamentally, it's them trying to convey their support and empathies. Also, although there's no differences between the control condition and the aggregate of two AI conditions, but there were significant differences in the two AI conditions. People, when they're in the AI added condition, they feel that they are more authentic. So when they started this process, they feel that they conveyed better, more authentic, they feel better about themselves, more authentic when they use AI, when they start the process, compared to when AI was the drafter, when AI started the process. So the perceived authenticities have two layers of findings. First, no difference between control and aggregated AI conditions, but when humans are in the driver's seat and with AI support, they feel themselves to be significantly more authentic. So the last thing we all care about, not only is the communication processes, but also it's really about how about the message produced during those interactions and collaborations with AIs. So the I think, key takeaway is actually when humans, first person, write those messages, they feel their message is a much higher quality when that they have AI write with them compared to that in the control condition. They believe that their message are stronger and more empathetic. And this is true when we measured empathy through different dimensions, both cognitive empathy, affective empathy, and attunement, perceived attunement. All those are different ways people perceive of empathy. And when with AI, they feel that those messages are more empathetic. So let's summarize what we shared so far for the outcome variables. So when AI and human collaborate, fundamentally, they change the communication processes. It's, I think, trade-off processes. It's less effort, but more human feel that because people feel that they have less control. Their perceived authenticity has not changed. They fundamentally still believe that they're the human, same. And for the message qualities, they perceive the message qualities higher. Feel free to, Pat, if you have questions, feel free to stop me. So key conclusion is human AI collaboration can really support empathetic message generation. It's hard to be supportive, but with AI, it's much easier and the quality might be even higher. So the first two study I shared about how perceptions is really how AI has changed the core aspect of communication from language to human AI interaction processes. So the next one I want to talk about, maybe spend about 10 minutes to talk about, is about attitudes towards AI. So one aspect is really the processes. The second aspect is we human beings, how we think about those different tools and medias we interact with. So for this one, I want to quickly share two studies. One is a meta-analysis. The second is a systematic review to unpack fundamentally humans, fundamental orientations and attitudes towards algorithms and AI systems. So all this work are led by all those pretty and amazing, cute collaborators. Sarah will she is a first-year PhD student in our lab, and her so it's really both projects are possible because of her huge amount of work. And Chianja is assistant professor at Northeastern University, and she led the meta-analysis. And Jinshi Li is a PhD student at UT A&M, and both of them they have done amazing work. I'm the one most do the talking, but they're the ones actually do most of the hard work and heavy lifting works. So the first one for the meta-analysis study. So if we think about, I think in the past decade, there's lots of debates, or I think that's one theory has been cited a lot. It's about algorithm version. So algorithm version is the idea that people prefer judgment humans' judgment over the judgment coming from algorithms, even when algorithms have superior performances. So they call this algorithm version. So we love to rely on humans better than rely on algorithms. So there's another there's another, I think that theoretical orientation is called algorithm appreciation. The idea is that actually compared to humans, people think that decisions from algorithms are better. So people prefer algorithms decision than human decisions. So two very contradicting hypotheses, algorithm version and algorithm appreciation. But if you think about those two dimensions, I think that what's important is what's baseline compared to what. So if you think about one, let's talk about is that really algorithm aversion, that is people prefer human judgment over algorithm judgment. If you think of the baseline, maybe it's not algorithm version, but it's human appreciation. We are not dislike algorithms or avert to algorithms. We just like human beings better. So it's that's we call human appreciation. The next is hopefully it's not human version. So it's people will prefer algorithms judgment over human judgment, even when human has superior performances. So whenever I ask my husband to go to take a vitamin, he was like, I'm giving him really those poisons. But when his Apple Watch say, hey, now you have to get up and take a walk, he does that immediately. So we do see those kind of dynamics. I hope that's not human aversion, but we see all those kind of complicated everyday situations like that in our daily life. So for the meta-analysis we did, it's really trying to unpack these four dimensions, AI versus human, and aversion versus appreciation. So the core research questions is, can we accumulate all the existing studies to answer the question, are people more averse to algorithm or human in the decision processes? So for this study, at that time, we did the exclusion criteria and have to have a comparison group, human versus AI, and have to be experimental studies. And we have about 30 studies and 900 participants that meet those criteria. So we also code different moderators from what type of task, what's the objectives, and what's the human characteristics, all the important dimensions we think that will determine or will impact whether it's human versus algorithms, those orientations. So here are the results. On the party side is algorithm appreciation, on that side is algorithm version. So here's high-level results. So in general, people actually they have algorithm appreciation. Compared to humans, they prefer all those decisions and judgment from algorithm. We have a general trend of algorithm appreciation. So this effect size should give some main insights. Yet, I think that there's lots of unanswered questions. Why? What are the mechanisms? How do we take different contexts into consideration? And can we develop some theories, help us to understand more about those mechanisms and those contexts? So the second study is a systematic review. So we want to not only have experiments, we want to have surveys, we want to have focus groups, we want to have case studies. We're really trying to incorporate all those evidence that have ever been studied in this field and trying to unpack fundamentally how humans respond to different algorithms in those processes. Again, 4 dimensions: algorithm aversion, algorithm appreciation, human aversion, and human appreciation. Algorithm aversion is people prefer human judgment, even when algorithm doing better. And algorithm appreciation, people rely on algorithms more. And human aversion, people prefer algorithm judgment, even humans are superior. And human appreciation, people prefer human advice than algorithm advice. So what we want to do is all the literatures, can we find some themes and what can we learn from those literatures? And it's really how can we get more mechanisms and context from all those existing literature from this systematic review? So for this study, we surveyed, I think that we have about 3,000 articles, peer-reviewed articles, and we still want it's an empirical study. We removed all those theoretical pieces, and we also really want to have the study actually compared human versus algorithms. And they also have certain outcome variables and published in English. So here is I think that the chart of about how we review this process. The total number of articles in our study is about 155. For each article, so we have this the key dimension of this study. What's the key findings and how they conduct these studies? Who are the participants? What are the outcomes? What are the theories? How they drive all those ones? So we have all code all those different important informations and for the study. So that first question, what type of algorithm orientations have we found in this research? So we have know there's algorithm aversion and algorithm appreciation. But we also identified 2 new orientations. The first is algorithm ambivalence. Since people have both aversion and appreciation of algorithm. In daily lives, we have this like this. For me, it's chocolate cookies. I have a strong hate and love relationships with that. So this is algorithm ambivalence. People have strong aversion and appreciation for both. The last one is algorithm apathy. People has neither aversion or appreciation, so they're indifference. So they don't have any strong or significant attitudes towards algorithms. So our research had actually extended previous literature and identified 2 new attitude orientations towards algorithms. So if we look at overall all those ones, majority of study actually identified is algorithm aversion. So this is very contradiction to the first meta-analysis. Meta-analysis find appreciation, but for this new literature, aversion count as more than half. And I think appreciation is less than 12, is about 12%, and empathy and ambivalence is another big portion of that. 20% of people that actually don't really have any preferences, and 16%, not people studies, 16% they actually they have find ambivalence towards algorithms. Then we were trying to see what would determine those different orientation toward algorithms. We group them into four domains: human, algorithm, tasks, and outcomes. First, when we think about human factors, human as participants and human as counterparts to algorithms, it's really where the study conducted, who are those samples really determined outcomes. The second, I think that is study methodologies. The second part, I think the study design part, is human as counterpart of algorithms. In those studies, if participants themselves have to be the decision maker versus that it's a hypothetical situation that they're experts doing those decision making or layperson make those decision makings, significant impact how people think whether they should rely on algorithm or humans. The second is really think about highlight is the decision-making process is never all the sophisticated process. Most of the time, people use heuristics. They have all those biases and stereotypes or their habits drives how they use it. I also want to highlight what's in this study, a key fundamental aspect is humanness. What do we mean by human? Many of the research find that people's orientation towards their core values and beliefs about fundamentally what is human. So they think that emotions, all those connected to human relationships, social dynamics are fundamentally human. So they would believe that those ones are the ones core to our values. The study also showed individual differences and cultural differences. And in Eastern cultures, they're more like the appreciation and they're more likely to welcome all those algorithms. In Western cultures, very likely not the case. So this is the last thing I want to share about in trying to map all those different pieces together. On one hand, we have those algorithm or orientations, aversion, appreciation, ambivalence, and empathy. On the other hand, it's not just one single factor, human factor, algorithm factor, but all the interactions between human factor, algorithm factors, task factors, and outcome factors. When all those really complicated multi-level interactions happens, actually determines people's orientations towards algorithms. So in today's talk, I shared fundamentally how we study our relationships with those media. I talk about studies to think about how all those different AI cues change our language production. I share studies about when AI embedded in message productions, how the communication process changed and how our perceive ourselves changed and how the message itself changed. I also talk about how human beings, their fundamental attitudes towards AI. I'm really excited and I'm always fascinated by all those medias from social robots to AIs to all those social medias. But I'm super excited about those machines because I love human beings. I'm always trying to see, can I understand ourselves better when we study those technologies? So the key questions I want to propose and always trying to think is, what mirrors do machines hold up to human nature? But I think the more important question is not how we can reflect ourselves when we have machines as mirrors, but really what type of AI can best support human. When we go back to 2,000 years ago, we have Talos, and Talos are really strong and can throw rocks and to protect human beings. Now we have AIs, can make our work faster, more efficient, and also can complete most of my work. So what type of AI is really best to support humans? I think that recently there's lots of discussion about strong AI versus AI, weak AI. The original framework is really, if it's AI, can almost like behave like a human to make decision making, that is called strong AI. And then all the current model we have every day, equal ChatGPT, those are weak AI because they can only focus on narrow task. I believe that when we categorize AIs by their capacities, maybe that's not best way to think about AI. More importantly, is I think AI should be the ones supporting human flourishing. And this human flourishing will have multiple levels, both at individual level, group level, and also cultural level and societal level. Really appreciate you all, and hopefully we have some time for love to go forward for your questions. I will stop
Thank
sharing so I can see your faces.
Great. Thank you so much, Sunny. Please give a
Thanks,
warm
Pat.
round of applause for her amazing presentation and all the insight that you have shared with us from all the different study. I think people are asking if you could also share the link to some of the published work as well. I think they would love to go and read it later. So if you have
Yeah, love that.
yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, so Pat,
So
maybe I will share those with you, and then you can share with the group.
or you can also post it in this chat as well.
Okay,
um,
great. Yeah.
if you have them at hand. Cool. Yeah, so now we have time for a Q&A with the audience. You can sort of post your question in the Q&A tab in the Zoom, and I could sort of ask that question on your behalf. Yeah,
Great.
yeah. Any questions so far? And yes, okay, so I see one about the study. Yes, so people are looking for the link for the study.
Mm,
Yeah. Cool. So I think while we are waiting for the audience question, I think they're still processing because there's a lot
mm,
of exciting work that you are doing that you shared today. I'm curious about when you use the word weak media and strong media, it also kind of connect me to the idea of weak tie and strong tie, right? That
mm,
in social relationship, we have weak tie with people that we interact with, like
mm,
people that stay with foods
mm,
or people that we interact, like your colleague, like sometime, right? And if we like right now, AI is kind of like replacing the weak tie a little bit because instead of us
mm,
going, we have AI that shop on our behalf. We don't go to the restaurant. We use an AI to order food and they deliver it to us.
mm,
Um,
mm.
what do you think is the consequence of this? And how do you sort of connect it back to the idea of like human flourishing? Yeah.
Yeah. A great question, Pat. First is that I think that I'm an introvert. For me, if like I would rather just use ChatGPT to deliver food for me, I think those are
Yeah.
great ways we use AI in a way, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
I do think that those are parts of human flourishing is what our fundamental human needs. Do AI can fulfill that or not?
Mm-hmm.
So I want to put those aside. I think that AI, when used those purposes, do benefit a certain group of people. But I think that the key question you ask is really when we have diminished the social interactions because of AIs. Um, Mainly,
Mm-hmm.
also mostly those kind of diminished social interactions are focused on weak ties, how we can further think about both
Mm-hmm.
immediate, short-term and the long-term consequences of those
Right.
interaction. Um, I think that you both, I think you know what I think you might know my answer is. I think we do need further research to have
Yeah.
further strong evidence for that. Currently, if you ask people, oh, your answer will, most answer you'll get is that, well, that's bad. They hate
Mm-hmm.
AI because that replace of social ties.
Yeah.
What type of evidence, I think,
Mm-hmm.
how can we design smarter research to
Mm-hmm.
really achieve that? I think that is super important. But
Right.
also, I think that also it's really, I think that when we think about weak ties, right? So I think that one type of weak ties is ordering food, but other weak ties is super important, is about community building. When you talk to
Mm.
neighbors, when you go to a
Yeah.
superstore, when you raise that,
Yeah.
it creates those kind of important moment, not only
Mm-hmm.
for social connection, but also improve people's well-being
Yes.
at the group level. So I think that's really essential here.
Mm-hmm.
So my pet the short answer to your important question is first, I do think that we need better design research to answer this question. And the second,
Right.
most people, I think that also love is you think about weak ties. Lots of concerns now is about strong ties. When teenagers
Mm-hmm.
talk to
Right.
ChatGPT instead their parents,
Right.
we do need to better designs. I think this is a design question. We want to design better systems to support people's connection with each other,
Yes.
both strong tie and weak ties.
Totally, absolutely. I think that's a really great answer. My work also kind of remind me of, like when you talk about sort of AI helping with the email, right?
Mm,
AI is gonna mediate many form of human
mm,
communication, right? Not just
mm,
email, but now AI has been integrated in like group messaging or many more platform. And as your work has shown, it really reshaped the way that we communicate. There's also a
mm,
work from Naman group in Cornell Tech, right, that look at
mm,
when the AI kind of has certain bias, it manifests in the
mm,
text that the user produce with AI as well.
mm, mm.
Have you thought about what would be the kind of intervention that can be done to kind of make sure that people are having agency as they are kind of using this tool to help with their communication?
Yeah. I think that so again, I think Pat, you are a maker. I do think that you have this, or it's really, I think that interventions and the design questions. Um, if I think that we don't know much about AI, but we know a lot about human beings. So that's a core message I do want us to think. We know what will make people thrive. It's fundamentally, I think that
Hmm.
I work a lot focus on adolescents. So I will talk about first is what will make adolescents thrive. Physical well-being, the
Hmm.
good sleep, good nutrition, and they
Hmm.
have
Yeah.
strong social relationships, supporting networks, resilience. So I think those are, I think that important part we have to build in those systems as part of the agency. I think that if you think about it's a couple, I think really interesting studies, I think that in the social media aspect is they ask people is what your goal are. So if they'll be more mindful, more agentic about their goals are, so that will direct their media use. I think that's the same thing for the AI as well. So it's really put those designs, I think, goal-oriented, agentic-driven use patterns as a part of designs. I think
Right.
that's second part. And I think that that's one part of it. The second part is also led by our great colleague Angela Lee, and her is really think about the mindset. Is first, I think when the design aspect is really put the affordance of agentic design there, but second is mindset. How do I think about AI tools? Is that as addictive tool that I'm totally rely on, as super powerful and much smarter than me and better than me, knows everything? Or it's really a tool that can help me to develop my own capacities, resilience, and get support. Do you think that is how to
Right.
really think about those tools, people's mindsets and their mental models will also impact how they use it?
Absolutely. There's a
Mm,
question from the audience asking if you look at any of the research on how AI mediate
mm,
human interaction with nature. So not just
mm,
human interaction, but human interaction with nature
mm. Yeah.
and ecological well-being as well. To add, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I think that Pat, you just shared me that study you had, right? So it's really, I think that
Ah,
when
yeah, yeah,
generated content actually change how
yeah,
people perceive our reality. I
yeah.
do think that whenever our personal experiences are mediated by media, either as
Mm-hmm.
human beings or natures, we've it's fundamentally change it.
Hmm.
Um, Again, I think that's it's really we need better research to understand more. Um, when we think about the VR a few years
Hmm.
ago, people are so fascinated about this VR as a possible intervention
Right.
because those heightened experiences are like a strong dosage. You get it when you see an environment change, or like
Hmm.
that. I think that's one. But we don't know is how those strong dosage will, how long that will last, and when
Yeah.
should it be another one too. Same as AI. How do we think about AI as a way for us to be more immersive in the environment, or as a way to block us to certain type of environment?
Mhm.
I think that those are great research questions.
Right. There's a question around how people perceive AI respond. They're asking, when people perceive AI respond, do they perceive it as more objective, more knowledgeable, or what are the quality that people perceive AI respond to be different from human
Yeah.
respond? Yeah.
Totally. I think that's such a good question. I was just talking to a senator yesterday, and I think that lots of current discussions about AI companions are always focused on those human nature and
Mm-hmm.
human likeness of those chatbots. So
Mm-hmm.
this is because they develop those attachment and those
Yes.
relational dynamics so harmful. I think that's totally true. That's one dynamic. But another one is human use those. I think that we call automation bias. They believe
Yeah.
that
Right.
ChatGPT are more objective, right?
Mm-hmm.
They are much they don't have that personal interests
Yes.
compared to human. So all these perceived objectivities actually is another way that have huge impact on how people perceive those facts. So they
Yeah.
trust AI. Another, I always use my husband as an example. So he has some back pain. And then he go to the doctor, and doctor said that you're okay. But he's search ChatGPT, his answers. He thinks ChatGPT is much better.
Mm.
Somehow, I'm not sure why that's the case, but it's really be perceived objectivities.
Mm.
those are determine how people use it
Right.
in those situations. So I
Right.
do think that's right. Both perceived objectivities and emotional attachment can be the mechanisms
Yeah.
driving those emotional manipulation or
Right.
persuasion impact for the AI. But I
Yeah.
think that one. Go ahead.
You should do more study with your husband. Seems like your
Yeah, yeah,
husband would be
yeah,
a
yeah, yeah,
perfect
yeah, totally.
subject for
Good
you to
case study,
experiment.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But at the same time, I mean, we know that AI is also very biased, right? Like, when you talk about objectivity, it's also interesting because, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like this, like, there's a tension between how we perceive machine as having no stake in our life and just, be as objective as possible. But at the same time, we know that sometimes, and many times actually, model can be sycophantic, it could be biased, it could try to kind of, optimize for your engagement and have that negative, like, dark patterns that get people addicted as well. So I think it's kind of interesting. Yeah.
Totally. I think that, Pat, you're totally right. I think that all those data and the training models come from data, and data have those bias and
Yes.
training process too, and
Yeah.
answers those predict models. I think that yeah, how to inform and educate people in those users. I think that's so important.
Yeah. Yeah, a comment from the audience saying that if AI model is modeled only after human intelligence, it will inherit only human way of seeing the world.
That's so
I
interesting.
think that's really true.
Yeah,
Yes, yes.
yeah.
Um, I'm curious, what are you working on next? Like, I mean, these are great projects that you had shared today, but I'm curious, what is the future direction of the social media lab? And I want to say that I had the privilege of joining your workshop actually at Stanford with my student a couple months ago, and you had organized a really exciting group of people from academia industry to think about a companion AI and what is the research agenda for the future. What are you thinking about next in your research group? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that we have so many research paths, we have maybe 50 projects going on all the
Wow.
same time. It's an
Amazing.
amazing group of people doing amazing product, very, I think that productive. I think that into this, I think that strong media and weak media and AI aspect.
Mhm,
So we currently, a couple stream. First is, I think that we focus on AI literacy and how
mhm,
to, on the user side, how to empower people to become more agentic,
mhm,
especially for the groups that they might, I think, I don't know, I hate vulnerabilities, but that
mhm.
this vulnerability, this term, but it's really adolescents, older people, and people in those underserved communities, how we can
Right,
empower them so they can better leverage these two. So that is
right.
one aspect he's working on. Importantly, I think that I went to your workshop too. The reason I went there, because I really want to understand curiosities. How can we
Mhm,
teach curiosities and
mhm,
how unfold learnings? I think that's a key aspect of that. So AI literacies, curiosities, and lifelong learning. So that's one aspect of AI for that. Another side is working with a couple some policymakers to think about what's the right framework
mhm.
to regulate
Yes.
those AI tools.
Yeah.
Um, California has some bills coming out now, already come out, but they're also thinking about, for example, the disclosure or those different parts.
Mhm,
Um, do we have any research evidence to see those are effective or not? And what's the best way for policies to really think about how research can support policymakers in the process. And also really excited is really about, I think the last couple of studies we presented is really how we can use AI to understand human better from the when we
mhm.
collaborate with AIs. We have a few experiments going on right now to further understand these processes and uncover new ways that when what at what conditions human work better with AI and what conditions not. So those are a couple ways that we're being working on right now.
Amazing. I'm really excited about all your work. I think your work is really, allow us to understand how we as a human species like co-evolve with AI and answer many of these fundamental questions. There's a question from the audience asking about the positive trust in algorithm, like whether we will have an inflection point given that, in this past year, there are a lot of question about using AI for, things that are not so great, like violence or war,
Mm.
whether people would start to think about how we trust AI or algorithm differently.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, Great question. I do think that when we trust is such a interesting interesting concept. I think the core is we should trust the AI tools or any tools that's trustworthy, but do not trust tools
Hmm.
that are not trustworthy. So I think that it's
Right.
the core of any project. I would think that it's not really how should we promote people to trust more, but it's really more how we
Hmm.
can develop a critical, I think that thinking processes at the individual
Right.
level. But also I think that if you think about design level, how we can design those tools to support humans flourishing and support those
Hmm.
tools become trustworthy, and at policy
Yeah.
level, how we can put certain guardrails for that. So I think that is, if I think about AI tools and trust, I would go from those three aspects. Um,
Amazing. Great. Thank you so much. I think we are running out of time now, so please, everyone, give another round of applause for Dr. Sunny Liu. Her work is really exciting, and we hope to have you back sometime in the future when you have more exciting research on this topic. And for everyone joining in via Zoom today, we really appreciate you being part of this AHA seminar series on AI and human flourishing. Please look at our website for the coming up for the next one, and hope to see you all again soon. So thank you very much.
Thanks
Thank
so much,
you.
Pat. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Sunny. Hope to see you at Stanford again soon.
Yeah. Thanks, Pat. See you guys soon. Audrey, thanks so much for both. Bye.